Hi everyone, my name is Mani Pandey and I lead the UXR team for driver and delivery at Lyft. If you're not from the US, you might not be familiar with Lyft. Lyft is a rideshare company with services in the US and Canada. And today I'll be speaking to you about the trends that I have seen in Quant Research. To ensure that we are all on the same page, I should clarify that when I say quant research, I'm specifically talking about survey research and statistical analysis of survey data. Heads up, you'll see many photos of Vespers in this talk. And if you have time later, I can talk more about why I see parallels between a Vespa and good research. Here's my agenda for today. First, I'll spend some time talking about my background, especially how I have brought together my background in forecasting research and quant research for this talk. Secondly, I'll introduce you to the concept of signals. That is a common technique that forecasters use to be able to forecast the future. I'll share some signals that I have seen in the field of quant research that point us to changes or trends in the future. I'll also share what I believe researchers need to do to be more effective going forward. And for those who are listening to the recording live, I'll be happy to take questions at the end. So let me start by first telling a little bit about myself and my background. So I have a PhD in sociology. I'm sure some of you have studied in a PhD program in the US, and you know that as part of the degree, you have to take 2 comp exams. And one of my specializations was research methods. So this meant that I specialized in both qualitative and quantitative research methods. This meant that I took a bunch of courses in statistics. And when I was in grad school, I also became quite adept at statistical software. Specifically, I used SAS quite a lot. And my first job out of grad school was to work at Institute for the Future, which is a forecasting research company based here in Palo Alto, California. And I did forecasts for a horizon of anywhere from 3 to 10 years. And at all my jobs, I have continued to do a lot of survey research. So for the talk today, I'm going to bring my background in forecasting and quant research together. To start with, I want to share this quote from William Gibson, who is a science fiction writer. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. This quote beautifully captures the basic principle of forecasting research. If you'd like to forecast the future, you should look around and look for signals that point to what to expect in the future. And so let's dive deep into what's a signal and how do signals help forecast the future. So as I mentioned that you need to look for signals to be able to forecast the future. So what is a signal? A signal is a small or a local innovation or disruption that has the potential to grow in scale and geographic distribution. It can be many things. It can be an innovation, a new product, an event, a local trend, or an organization. For example, when I worked at IFTF in 2008, we interviewed a woman who was live casting on now defunct Justin TV that allowed users to broadcast video. She was sharing her live 24/7. Her channel had hundreds of regular viewers who not only watched her live, but also interacted with each other and interacted with her through a chat box. We saw this as an early signal where anybody would be able to create and share videos and become stars of their own show. We have seen this become a reality, from individuals becoming influencers on TikTok or Instagram to YouTube breakout stars like Marques Brownlee, popularly known as MKBHD, who reviews technology, to HBO's breakout star Issa Rae, who started her career on YouTube in a hit series Awkward Black Girls before moving on to HBO. As a quant researcher with background in forecasting research, I have seen several signals of how survey and statistical research is becoming more and more de-skilled due to automation. And this is what I will be sharing with you today. One of the things that I've learned from doing forecasting research is that to be able to forecast the future, you should also look at the past. So I'll take you back to the past, 2004 to be precise, when I was finishing my PhD degree. This is a syntax for running an ANOVA analysis in SAS. As you could probably guess, SAS has a very steep learning curve. Since it's completely syntax-based, there is no graphic user interface. Users had to have a good understanding of the statistical method that they were using for SAS analysis, had to be very familiar with the inner knowledge of the analysis, and had to know their data set well. It was a very tedious process. One mistake and you could spend hours troubleshooting your code. At the same time, while I was using SAS for running statistical analysis, I also needed survey software to collect data. In grad school, I remember sending mail surveys and inputting each piece of data manually into an Excel file. The first survey software that I used was Confirmit, which has been around since the 1990s. And the first time when we used Confirmit, I didn't program the survey. We hired a programmer whose specialization was survey programming to program the survey. So there was no SurveyMonkey, there was no Qualtrics. It was a very different world. In the last 15 years, I've seen a big shift in survey research and statistical software. And R is still very popular in academia, and it's kind of similar to SAS. So let's look at some of the signals that I have seen of change. If you're listening to this talk, you probably know the difference between a t-test and a chi-square test. T-test is used to compare means of two populations and is based on the assumptions of normality. And chi-square allows researchers to test whether or not there's a statistically significant association between two categorical variables. A few years, one of my researchers who used to work with me and didn't have an experience with statistics decided to up-level her analysis beyond reporting frequency distribution. She used Excel's advanced capabilities to run the t-test, and she was able to run the analysis, and the program did throw out some results. She came to me to help her interpret the results, and I pointed out to her that she should have run chi-square tests for independence, since the variables were categorical, and in fact the results were kind of nonsensical, since the variables were not identified correctly. This was an aha moment for me. I thought, wow, you can run the analysis without understanding the nuances of the test. And if it wasn't for me, the researcher would have reported the results without understanding that the results were nonsensical. Here's another example. The other day, I was speaking with another UX research colleague, and we were discussing differences between market research and UX research. And I pointed out to her that market research specializes in doing pricing research. She told me that her team had conducted pricing research, although they had no background in market research. And they were able to do it because Qualtrics provides functionality to do conjoint analysis. I was surprised and shocked at the same time, because the last time I did pricing research, despite having a deep background in stats, I hired a team of statisticians to help me with conjoint analysis. These people had very special skills that they had acquired over a long career. I hope you've all watched Taken. But here we are today, where you can use a tool like Qualtrics to run a complex analysis without the researcher having in-depth knowledge about the method. Similarly, a few years back, my team was working on a brand survey, and the researchers used templates in SurveyMonkey to create a brand survey without any prior knowledge of how market researchers have historically measured different dimensions of a company's brand. What are all these signals telling us? There's clearly a trend towards de-skilling, automation, and templatization, and some might even argue towards democratization of quant research. It's easier to write surveys because there are templates that researchers can use. In addition, tools like SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics make it easy for researchers without deep experience in statistics to use techniques that they have not used previously. I would argue that this is a positive trend and not a negative trend, since more and more researchers are being empowered to do quant research that they could not have done previously. It's always better when researchers know more techniques and use the right ones that help them answer the business questions on hand. But this does come at a price. Being in the weeds and getting practice is what provides a deep understanding of the data methodology, and that seems to be getting lost in automation. So basically, it's a trade-off: more accessibility, more shallow understanding. As part of preparing for this talk, I decided to do a quick and dirty survey with researchers and asked how they do research now. The sample size for the survey is too small for me to share the data, but it did provide me some directional data and insights into the shifts in the industry from the perspective of other researchers. What I learned is that more and more researchers have stopped using tools like SPSS, R, SAS, or Stata because these tools are cumbersome to use. They're hard to learn. And then you also sometimes have to rely on other tools to make graphs when you're using these tools. Researchers who participated in my unscientific survey pointed out that they were using Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey more at their job, and they saw various advantages with these tools. What I heard from them is that tools like Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey provided the ability to use techniques like mastiff, conjoint analysis, even though they don't have previous experience. What I found really interesting was that researchers pointed out that these tools help them figure out insights from the data and even help them figure out some kind of survey logic. In some ways, they're kind of doing the work for us. So now let us look at what is needed from researchers to use these powerful tools more effectively. Clearly, we can agree that there's been a shift towards automation. The signals have been there in the last 10 years, and I believe this trend would continue. So the question in front of us is that in this new world, when the tools are becoming simpler, easier, and automated, what are the skills that are needed? We have all these tools that are available to us at our disposal, but as the ancient adage goes, with great power comes great responsibilities. As researchers, we want to make sure that we are using the right methods. We should not be running a t-test when we should run a chi-square test. We should not be concluding that there are statistically significant differences when none exists. So what are the skills that are needed to be doing good research going forward? Here's my advice for everyone. It's back to the basics. Basic statistical skills matter even more. Before powerful tools like Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey, if you didn't have statistical knowledge, you could not run the analysis. But these tools have empowered those who don't have deep knowledge to be able to do the analysis. This obviously creates a lot of room for error. As you know, in research, we have a famous saying, garbage in, garbage out. It's important to understand basic level statistics to ensure that you're not making a mistake. So my advice to everyone is to take an upper level statistics class, an undergrad class, and that should help you set up for success. Obviously, Coursera or Udacity also have some classes that teach you basic statistics. So a class that would cover basics about sampling, analysis, like correlation, t-tests, etc. And many researchers that I have worked with went to some excellent HCI programs in the US, but none teach basic stats, although many graduates from these programs become UX researchers and designers. So I would say that if you're planning to go to a master's in an HCI program in the US, when you are studying, go and take a class in basic statistics in the Department of Sociology or Psychology or Political Science. The next thing is that we also need to learn basic survey writing skills. I would encourage everyone to also take a basic class that teaches survey writing, since it's important for researchers to know how to craft survey questions. What types of scales do you want to use? Should it be a 5-point scale or a 7-point scale? Should the scale be labeled? How do you avoid common survey mistakes like double barrel questions, avoiding double negatives or bias questions? Yes, you can rely on templates that tools provide you, but these templates might not work for the kind of business questions that you need to answer. And lastly, you should familiarize yourself with sampling strategy. It's important to figure out sampling so you know what should be the optimal sample for your research. Don't rely on just rule of thumb or intuition. Remember, tools at best can make recommendations, but they don't know your research goals. What kind of analysis are you planning? Are you going to be comparing subsamples, which will influence your subsampling strategy, and that obviously is going to impact your total sample. So before you start writing the survey, come up with a sampling strategy. Be explicit about what is the margin of error that you are comfortable with, and working backwards from it, come up with a sample size. If you're going to compare subgroups, have a subsampling strategy. And again, you can learn a lot of this basic sampling in any stats one-on-one class. So we're almost at the end of the talk. So I'll end by saying that overall, I believe it's a positive trend that tools are empowering more researchers to be able to do quant analysis, but it's on us as researchers to ensure that we up-level our basic survey, sampling, and statistical analysis skills to fully leverage this tool. And lastly, no, I don't think robots are going to replace us. And thank you for listening to me. And you can find me on Medium and LinkedIn, and please feel free to reach out to me.